So let's attack this new narrative, break it down. You know, there's a time to listen and ignore and walk away, and there's a time to listen, hear nonsensical stuff, and then sit down and educate. And this is one of those times. At least I feel that in my spirit. Let's assume Coppinger's reporting is true, which is a big assumption to make. Coppinger is often wrong. That Kambosos is going to fight Lomachenko likely. That Haney's still in the mix, but it's likely going to be Lomachenko. Let's first give Kambosos credit for following up a great victory against Teofimo Lopez and fighting either Lomachenko or Devin Haney, if Coppinger's reporting is true. A lot of your favorite fighters, a lot of people's favorite fighters would have followed up a big win like Teofimo Lopez. They would have milked it against, let's say, John Doe, number 27 in the rankings, and milked that victory in a homecoming fight. It looks like Kambosos is not going to do that. So, first of all, we got to give credit to Kambosos. Good for him. He's behaving like a fighter in an era where less fighters are behaving like fighters. We have to reward the fighters who are behaving like fighters. Like I've said hundreds, if not thousands of times on this channel, we have to reward the fighters who are fighting tough fights. We have to attack this no-loss culture in boxing where a loss is a fighter being exposed. A loss means the fighter is overrated or overvalued. No, sometimes you just lose and you bounce back from that, as Lomachenko has proven in his career when he lost to Salido, bounced back against Gary Russell Jr. He loses to Teofimo, he bounces back against Nakatani and Comey, and will likely land the Kambosos fight. It's okay to lose fight as long as you learn from your failure and bounce back from it. Now let's attack this narrative out there in the LDBC, and I'm seeing it on Twitter as well. And normally I would ignore it, but it seems to be prevalent out there. And it bothers me because it's a false narrative that Kambosos is somehow ducking Devin Haney by fighting Lomachenko. And I understand if your narrative, if your official position is that undisputed matters and undisputed should take precedent over every other thing, although it hasn't taken precedent in recent history in boxing in the four-belt era. But if your position is that it should take precedent and Haney should get the fight because it's undisputed, that's fair. It's also fair if your subjective opinion is that the Haney fight is the more entertaining fight, the better fight, and he should get it over Lomachenko. Also fair, although I would disagree with you on that point. It's fair. What is not fair, what is not a fair opinion to have, and what is a nonsensical opinion to have, is that Kambosos is somehow avoiding Haney by fighting Lomachenko. He's avoiding fighter A, who is lower not only in the divisional and pound-for-pound rankings, by fighting fighter B, who is higher in both the divisional rankings and pound-for-pound rankings, and who the vast majority of the boxing public would say that Lomachenko is the tougher fight for Kambosos, both stylistically, and that Lomachenko right now is the more experienced, more accomplished, and better fighter than Devin Haney at this point. You don't duck. You guys have duck Tourette's is what's going on. Everything's a duck, 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 duck. And when it comes to boxing, most of the time that's true. We got a lot of fighters ducking other fighters. We got a lot of top 5 fighters not fighting other top 5 fighters. Look no further than guys like Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, sometimes Devin Haney, other guys at the top of 135. But we look at track records, who has had no issues fighting top opponents? Lomachenko, Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez, those guys fought each other. Their track record is pretty good. You also have to throw into consideration that not all things are even. So when we're negotiating a fight, and at the beginning of negotiations, one fighter says, hey, I have no problems going to Australia, I have no problems dealing with the restrictions. I have no problems doing my whole training camp there. I have no problems with a rematch clause. I have no problems with staying in Australia to train for the rematch. And then you have the other fighter who starts off from a position of, I'm not willing to do any of those things. And the receipts are out there. And then all of a sudden, no, I'll take whatever he's taking. We can't act like all things are even. But ultimately, the official position, my official position, and the sensical position, in my opinion, is it's impossible to duck Devin Haney by fighting Lomachenko. I mean, just think about it critically. Use your brain. Do you really think Kambosos would duck Devin Haney and fight Lomachenko? You know, if Kambosos refused to fight Devin Haney and fought, like I said, John Doe number 27 in the rankings, then we can call it a duck. But do you really duck the guy who's, say, number 3 or 4 in the rankings to fight guy who is number 2 in the rankings and right on the fringe of top 10 pound for pound? Nah. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. So there's being fair. There are some fair positions out there, but the positions I'm seeing from most of the LDBC right here on YouTube, and it's impossible to ignore because it seeps through, and on Twitter, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Kambosos is not ducking Devin Haney. Come on.